anti-advertisement for Snyder's. I think we need to take an approach here for monetizing this, which is not let's try to find sponsors and ads to throw in, but let's talk shit about brands until they pay us to stop talking about them.
Take the to threaten you.
Take the Will Smith approach. Get them to be like, keep my brand out of your mouth.
Yes. And please stop talking to us. There is such thing as bad publicity.
It's what is it? Shawshank Redemption, right? It's like, how did he get the money for the library in prison? They're like, here's the money. Please stop bothering us. Just go away. So I think if we annoy enough advertisers, we just got to pick someone. We got to pick someone who's got deep pockets, right? Who's sensitive.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier just to, here's some money, go away. And we don't care. What is it going to cost us a month? That's it? Okay, that's like a rounding error for the day for us. So here you go.
I feel like that just needs to be our general approach. Let's change the format of the show and just talk shit about people until they pay us to go away.
We are the Ransom Podcast.
We're going to be verbal terrorists. The podcast equivalent of terrorism politically. We will, we need to rebrand as the Antifa podcast, the official Antifa podcast.
That'll get attention.
Yeah, exactly. That'll get us on someone's radar.
They'll finally have a specific thing to target. Instead of just the name that's like, hey, let's just go after this name. At least fantastic. You are okay. What kind of Snyder's Bite was this?
The one that's pissing me off right now, it's one of the honey mustard pretzel pieces.
Oh, so you got a little spice in there too, so it's going to double down in there.
That's what it is. It's like lingering right there. And it's funny because I cleared up everything. I was feeling good. I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to talk. And
let me have a dry pretzel right before I go.
Fuck me and my need to snack. All right. Am I sounding good on your end?
Perfect.
Okay. I'll just fucking clear my throat. God damn it.
Let me clear my throat.
There we go. Get that one out there too. Got to de-gas. Fucking pretzel. I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing pretzel bites ahead of a recording. It's my vice snack, right? Like I can't help, but I love them. But yeah, no more.
Pretzels are pretzels.
Not before noon.
Especially good Snyder's.
It's gonna be like
good Snyder's sourdough.
Yeah, exactly. The fucking sourdough pretzels.
Gotta get used to that shit.
Absolutely. All right. Well, welcome again to another episode of Idiots Seeking Village, where we attempt to make sense of the senseless. I'm Rich, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Adam. Adam, big piece of news this week. The Rapture happened, and I can't help but notice that you're still here.
We're still here, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Nobody I knew was taken. I mean, I was really thought for sure I had some really well-worthy friends, but nope.
You think more highly of your friends than I do. My real question, though, for you is, did you sell any or all of your worldly possessions in advance of the Rapture? And did you keep the receipts?
No, I didn't even know the Rapture was coming until the day of. And I was like, oh, shit, I missed out. And then look at me.
Do we need to get the date right? Do you need to be like prepared mentally for that? Or is just if and when the Rapture comes, are you just going to be just scooped right up?
Yeah, I think we're just going to get scooped up. I don't think there's going to be, when you have people on Twitter and TikToks and YouTubes crying and telling you about saying goodbye and all these things, it's not coming. You just know. It's like, you guys know it's not happening.
I think the funny thing about it is always, oops, we got the date wrong, right? We misread it. If you ever saw that episode of Parks and Rec, where they've got the, what do they call themselves? The reasonableists. There's, we misread the thing. The end of the world is actually going to be this other date or whatnot. It's never, shit, we're still here. What does that say about me? There's a level of introspection that people don't take on that and going, yeah, no, dude, people got raptured. Just, you all suck. And that's why you're still here.
You just don't know the ones who got raptured.
Exactly, yeah. Guess what? The rapture did in fact happen, but you're still here, so guess what?
Yeah, I just love that the calculations for it are like, oh, we made a mistake. Well, did you have any other potential calculations going into it? Did you like say, well, it could be this day anyway? No, it was like, this is going to be the day. And then all of a sudden you have new calculations.
I think while we've been alive, there have been 4 separate rapture dates in our lifetime so far. There was one in 1994, which I don't remember. There was one in 2011, which I remember because it was in the middle of my honeymoon. And so we looked at each other, well, let's have some fun. We might not make it back, but we've had a good time so far. And hopefully not all the checks have to clear by the end of this. And then there's one
I think I remember that 94 one. I vividly, and otherwise it might have been a different date, but it had to be because I was in high school. And I remember for some reason vividly being in in the locker room for gym and people talking about it. Like, we're supposed to be taken tomorrow, whatever. I'm like, okay.
I don't remember the exact date, but I'm gonna assume it was preempted by the OJ chase, like everything else was that year, and that's why we don't remember it. Yeah, Rapture canceled due to Bronco chase on the I-5.
Due to better things on TV.
Yeah, and so then there was 2017 apparently. That was supposed to be a Rapture. I don't remember that one at all, and then of course this one. So again, I think
the Rapture is different than the Mayan end of days. So that doesn't include that then, correct?
I think it's supposed to be the same thing. But the Mayan end of days was always just, they only projected the calendar out so far because they're like, eventually whoever was writing it out was like, I'm tired, boss. I'm going home. Yeah, it was
that was supposed to be a thing. Like that was, they decided to stop writing and that's it.
We got some end of the world Roland Emmerich films out of it, I think, which was kind of nice. There was a little 2012 end of days monetization going off of that. I think I enjoyed it personally. And I was kind of like, you know what? I was working a job I hated and I was like, I'm not complaining if I don't have to go in tomorrow.
Yeah, I kind of like those end of days movies.
They're fun. Pretty fun. They're stupid fun.
Absolutely. Disaster movies are great.
But God damn it. I think speaking of being raptured, someone got raptured this weekend, or at least it gave the impression that there was. Did you see any of the video of the rally in Arizona?
Bits and pieces, because that was a spectacle for sure.
Spectacle is one way. I'm calling it the dingleberry atop America's shit Sunday of that 2-week period.
God.
Yeah. I personally loved kind of that juxtaposition, right? That kind of Erica Kirk going up there saying hate is not the answer and like forgiving what happened to her husband. And then Trump going up there a few minutes later being like, I hate all of my political opponents and I wish none of you well. It was, I personally, I found it entertaining. I mean,
this is funny coming from the guy who wished Ghislaine Maxwell well. He's like, of course I wish her well. I wish everybody well. That's what he said. And now he goes on stage and says that. What a fucking tool. What a tool. God.
I totally forgot that he did that. Holy shit.
I wish everybody well.
This is nothing new. This is nothing new or unexpected, but oh my God. I mean, look, this is how he's always been, right? And there's no reason to think he's about to stop now. Like, this caters to his base, plain and simple, and it always has. It's what they've always loved about him. And frankly, that's what the American electorate has always loved about its politicians and its leaders is, you and I are both old. You remember George H.W. Bush, the first one. He came out, I forget what the context was specifically, but he said, I will never apologize for the United States of America. And his approval rating shot through the fucking roof when that happened, right? We are happy to cause a trail of destruction wherever we go and say, fucking deal with it, but never ever say you're sorry for it.
No, you definitely don't want to apologize for America.
Yeah.
But, when you just say whatever's on your mind, when you have absolutely no filter whatsoever, he is great. I think that's one thing he seems to miss a lot when he says, everybody's against me, everybody has bad things to say to me on TV and on these talk shows. I'm like, but most of these are comedy shows, late night shows, and you are comedy gold. No president ever has been comedy gold like he has. Nobody. It's just, most of them are boring, or they'll say something, you'll make jokes about it, they got to work hard. You are it just pours out of you. It's like you write it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, those guys have to work hard to make jokes about Al Gore, right? Or whoever, you're so boring that we have to talk about how boring you are. Like, that's not good joke writing. Yeah, you could talk about Biden being old and dementia riddled, or it's so easy to make fun of Hillary Clinton, but like, it's so much easier to make fun of Trump because he's so sensitive, right? He might be like the single most insecure man in the world, and he desperately needs validation. And that's easy to make fun of. It's easy to make jokes around anything as a result of that.
And I mean, Obama's big thing was his tan suit people would make fun of because, how could he wear a tan suit? But I mean, Clinton was the last real comedy gold because of Lewinsky. If it wasn't for her, it'd been just like, he's whatever. And then you had Bush, who was a little bit doofy, but Trump is just every day. Tylenol. Don't take Tylenol. You shouldn't take Tylenol. You don't take Tylenol. My God.
Listening to him try to pronounce acetaminophen was just like, dude, you could have practiced that at least once before you got up there to speak. Like that was, whew, good time. But yeah, look, he's insecure, so he's easy to make fun of. Biden was old and not with it. Obama before him. Yeah, easy to be like, dude's an elitist. I don't think that was as funny because he had a good sense of humor about it. He was kind of like, yeah, okay. But yeah, Bush wasn't wasn't the brightest bulb. And remember Clinton before he got elected the first time, like he was out there like on MTV and stuff and interviewing with like college kids and taking questions. And I remember they were asking him like his underwear type and all that, right? That was like the first time really the electorate got to speak directly to a presidential candidate, like in that kind of very casual, candid, real world sort of way. And I
remember him with the saxophone on Arsenio Hall.
Yep.
Like nobody did that before.
The saxophone, exactly. What was the other one? Oh yeah, remember he smoked, but he didn't inhale marijuana, all that stuff. Yeah, we have a long, proud tradition of mocking presidents and making fun of elected leaders because we've got a First Amendment and we're entitled to do that. And I think you and I were chatting on this earlier, right? I think we'll cover the First Amendment and cover some of this today, but that's not what I want to focus on. I want to go back. I want to go back to this rally because I want to talk about America's very own Kirkland brand Dr. Evil, Mr. Stephen Miller.
Kirkland brand. It is funny. Charlie Kirkland brand. Okay. I like it.
A little play on words there. I appreciate you caught that. Yeah. Did you hear his speech? Did you?
Yes.
I mean, it was 6 minutes of the seriously most unhinged fucking shit I think I've ever heard. And I mean, we've lived through some crazy political times lately and we've heard some wacky stuff. I'm going to quote a middle minute and a half section of it because I want you to pay attention to the rhetorical style. I'm not going to play him because fuck Stephen Miller. He doesn't deserve more airtime and attention than he already gets. And I don't want to give him the validation, but I do want to read this part out. We stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble, and for those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us. What do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness. You are jealousy. You are envy. You are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity.
Yeah.
Enough of that shit. Does that sound like vaguely familiar? Like maybe if you gave it like a slight Austrian accent or something, like it might sound, I mean,
he wants to be the first Jewish Hitler. Is that his MO?
That's the thing, right? I mean, he's of Belarusian Jewish descent. His family emigrated here to escape anti-Jewish violence and pogroms, right? From Eastern Europe. These lines and the themes and the speaking style, they're cribbed directly from both Mein Kampf and from a Joseph Goebbels speech. That speech is called "The Storm is Coming." You can look it up. Go Google it. I'm including a link in the podcast notes here, but that's a 1932 speech. And this isn't, oh my God, Stephen Miller is going to be like the first Jewish Nazi, right? Like you just said, or he sounds like a Nazi. Like he fucking plagiarized this stuff. Let me give you a couple of specific examples because again, he's not an elected official, but he is like one of the most senior officials in his administration, and it is nuts. So Miller, right? We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. And our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. Mein Kampf always positions Aryans, right, as the builders of culture and creative force.
Yeah, I mean that's the vibe I even got. Even I don't even know this other stuff, but once he started saying that, I'm like, you're just talking about white people, aren't you?
Say it without saying it. I mean, from the lines in Mein Kampf are all the human culture, all the results of art, science, and technology that we see before us today are almost exclusively the creative product of the Aryan. The Aryan alone is the founder of higher humanity. All the great human cultures of the past were created by him. That's Mein Kampf. Goebbels, in his "The Storm is Coming" speech that he gave, is, we are the witnesses, the builders, the will bearers of our idea and our worldview. The ideas and the presentation are almost exactly the same. From Miller, you are nothing, you can build nothing, you can produce nothing. Mein Kampf just says, the Jew has never founded any civilization, though he's destroyed hundreds, right? Same idea, different wording, but same concept. Miller writes in a different section later in the speech, she goes, you have no idea the dragon you have awakened. From the Goebbels speeches, they have awakened a sleeping Germany. Miller says, I am the storm, we are the storm. Not only was Goebbels' speech titled, The Storm is Coming, but it has the line, people rise up and storm, break loose. There's another one, he kind of has it at the end, is Miller goes, the light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. And you remember we were talking about Cold Civil War and Italy's years of lead. Remember we talked about that guy, Julius Evola? Remember I mentioned him? Mm-hmm. He's that spiritual philosopher who kind of underpinned Italian fascism and some of the beliefs and concepts, right? So his belief was that history was a process of decay and that we'd fallen away from some spiritual golden age when everyone knew their place in a proper hierarchy. It's the same through line, the same core concept that's going through this, right? Again, the fascists all kind of share this ideology because it was an Italian ideology originally as it was created and built up. And Mein Kampf and all the ideology, they habitually cast things as like the light of culture and virtue against the darkness of destruction of perceived enemies, right? They particularly jump on Marxism and Judaism, especially in the Reich and not in Italy. But there's always these contrasts between the victory of better and stronger, right? The light and the good versus the dark without culture and all that. It's nuts, right? I mean, he didn't copy it word for word, but he took, if you can listen to the speech too, I wouldn't recommend it, the Goebbels speech, but like the speaking tenor, the kind of the short, choppy sentences, right? Very punchy, good for a rally, right? You kind of try to get people riled up. But all the concepts, the words are just updated and modernized for 2025 in America versus 100 years ago in Europe. Dude could use some therapy. I seriously think we should start a GoFundMe. Maybe just to get him like a PlayStation, buy him some like THC sodas, some like heavy dose stuff. And we got to find a way to like, for him to redirect his energy somewhere.
Man, that's some wild shit. I mean, especially this day and age when anything could be like found or tracked and seen, and to take so much tone and verbiage from fucking Nazi speeches. It's ridiculous.
The crazy part is he did that on purpose. Right. That wasn't an accident. Like he knew people would know, and he gets on TV, but he knows that only goes to like Fox News people. And it's an interview, right, with a camera. Mm-hmm. It's not a stadium full of people. And I don't know. Yeah. I should have double checked this, but I don't know that he's ever been on tour for these Trump rallies and all this. I don't know that he's ever been a speaker. I know like he's gone up in front of a CPAC and stuff like that. But I don't know if he's ever been in front of a group this large. And this wasn't an accident. He did this on purpose. He knew exactly what he was doing. But it got me thinking and you and I had this conversation before, and I think it's the general conversation is that about Trump's successor. What we know is J.D. Vance is the vice president. He's an elected official. Well, we know that Vance is Peter Thiel's puppet and that he's got his backing, right, to get it to Congress in the first place. And he got put onto the campaign ticket to continue to get the support. And he's been raised up by the Silicon Valley set to as a Trojan horse. And what they have is, I don't know, I've mentioned this to you before, I don't know if we've talked about it on the show, is they've got this vision of the way America should run, which is basically instead of a democratic government, they believe in like this techno-feudal CEO king and that these CEO kings have control over sections of the country and the economy. And they basically have authoritarian control over everything within there. And that's a vision that aligns a lot with Trump's own views, right? About being a CEO, being kind of the chief executive. And it aligns a lot with the unitary executive view, which is what Trump's former attorney general, Bill Barr, from his first term, and the Federalist Society have been proposing for years, and they've been talking about it pretty openly. And I think it's worth talking about both these things, the unitary executive theory and this Silicon Valley philosophy, which is called the butterfly revolution, until probably in a little bit more depth. We're not going to cover that here, but I think for now, I think it's important to cover a few basics, right? So unitary executive theory, which very much Trump is pursuing right now. It was proposed and brought up to him in the first term. And again, he was new to this, right? He didn't know how to like proceed with things, right, in government. And now he's kind of running rampant with it. So unitary executive theory is this. Basically, the president should have no congressional or judicial oversight over the powers of the presidency. And all the executive officers that he appoints in all the agencies that, are important to the president, they report to him directly. And they're not subject to Congress or the Constitution. It's, if you need like a modern day version, it's the Eric Cartman theory of the presidency. It's whatever, I do what I want.
Is the way the other branches. I gotcha.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, and it's based off a flimsy, well, at least was a flimsy theory about the way the Constitution is written, which is that the executive retains all powers delegated to it by the Constitution. So the idea is not, hey, I appoint Supreme Court judges and then Congress approves them. It's, no, I want this judge, so you're going to rubber stamp it, is the way. It is essentially, it's a direct attack on the concept of checks and balances.
But it kind of almost is turned out that way depending on if your party has a majority, then it's basically a rubber stamp. Now this is what we want. This is what you need to pass, and that's it. No, this guy's an ass.
Yeah, exactly. And the other one, the butterfly revolution, right? That was proposed by a guy named Curtis Yarvin back in 2022, he started a blog years ago, again, popular with kind of Peter Thiel and that Silicon Valley set. And this was covered pretty openly by a number of people at the beginning of this year and leading up to this year. But that plan, I said, calls for a reboot of American government, right? They want to see a CEO king where the legislative and the judicial branches are largely, they exist, but they're ceremonial, right? Again, they don't hinder what the CEO king wants. They're just there to rubber stamp things effectively. And part of that is purging the entrenched bureaucracy, right? Drain the swamp. Again, aligns with Trump's own views. And that's what we saw with Doge at the beginning of this year. Reduce the size of the bureaucracy. Their acronym for that is RAGE, which is Retire All Government Employees. They basically want to just get people out of there, and they want essentially to minimize the size of the federal government and then make it so that private enterprise can take over those particular roles. That private enterprise, of course, being reporting up to the CEO king, right? The shareholders who have an interest in it. Another point of theirs, they want to nullify both academia and the media, right? And so I think that's what we're seeing with the attacks and the pressure on CBS, ABC, and others. And of course, Trump's own remarks this past weekend that speech critical of him is illegal. I mean, that is an absolutely insane thing for a sitting president to say, but he said it right out loud. Obviously, education has always been in the crosshairs, at least for a couple of years now, but especially earlier this year, we saw like just hundreds of millions of dollars of federal grants and other blocks of money being withheld until these institutions capitulated to some culture war point or another. For instance, there was, I think, something like 70 million or something in grants that was held over, I believe it was University of Pennsylvania or Penn State, one of those in that area, where they basically had to sign on to the whole no trans athletes. And they had to, I kind of had to go along with that. And that was the criteria to free up that money, was they had to repudiate trans athletes participating in the sports. Yeah, and of course, there's always the verbal attacks on various university presidents who don't align with them. The big one, or one of the big ones, is what you and I already talked about. They want to centralize police forces. They want to federalize the National Guard, and they want to bring all the police forces up under their purview. And we talked about that military policing, right? Rolling up these people to regional and then state level and ultimately federal command, right, at the upper end. Right now, our police system is completely municipal, city, county, state, right? They don't all report to the same people. They all have different constituents that they report to. The idea here is commandeer all the guns, essentially. Like all the military, all of the guns for the various government agencies are ours. And the last one, I think this is kind of the critical one, is mobilize popular support is one of their planks. And I think we see this in normally, if I think about it before an election, you get this whole flood in the media of stories of like crime and immigrant caravans and whatever, right? And the idea is to sway people right before the election. And that's pretty standard practice, and it has been forever. This one is more get supporters on the street sooner and more regularly and get them worked up about things more consistently, right? So that they aren't like sitting back and just waiting. They want people riled up and active. I think that's why we see such a huge to-do around Charlie Kirk's shooting, right? It's politics 101 to never let a crisis go to waste, and they definitely aren't doing that, but it's not happening in a void. They want their base to feel attacked, and so that they're ready at the drop of a hat to support whatever reaction comes out of this.
Makes sense. To get a giant stadium filled with people in record time.
This is why they're talking about a National Day of Remembrance. This is why there's a proposal supposedly coming this week to put him on the 50-cent coin. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's why they're trying to milk this right now.
Well, they should since they're so anti-DEI, they should take off the dollar and put Charlie Kirk on there, for sure. I mean,
do we even have those coins anymore? I thought they stopped minting those.
They might have. So I'm sure they still have the mold. Just put them back on the placard and start printing them off again.
Yeah. Ridiculous. So yeah, it got me thinking, does anyone truly believe in a Vance presidency? Again, Trump's 79 years old. He's not in great health. He's being propped up in a lot of ways. But after this Miller speech, right, and just kind of how prominent he's been with so much policy, even during the Biden term, behind the scenes, he was working a lot on these immigration plans and Project 2025 and all these other things. Like he was under the radar, but he was there. He was involved. I'm wondering, is there going to be a power struggle, right, in the near future? He's not an elected official, again, but the more I see and hear of him, the more I realize he's primed to occupy a pretty meaningful role in any sort of administration going forward. And
probably.
Yeah, and I hate to keep kind of going back to the Third Reich, but he reminds me of Reinhard Heydrich in a lot of ways, right? That was the guy who built out the SS's intelligence apparatus. He oversaw the Gestapo. He founded the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, which was the secret police. And he chaired the Wannsee Conference, which was the one where they formalized the legal basis for the final solution, right, for the mass executions. He's the guy who fused police and intelligence services and the bureaucratic administrative power that made state terror possible, right, from top to bottom. He fused that. And yeah, there's something about Miller all but copying and pasting Mein Kampf and Goebbels' speech and mimicking that style. We know he's always been a piece of shit. We have video of him from high school, long before he was an adult, just being a massive racist and being incredibly demeaning towards minorities and people he views as below him, like janitors and things like that. And there's something about this past weekend and that Arizona speech that really just puts a bit of an exclamation mark on how far these plans have come and how entrenched this all is. I don't think it's not going to die with Trump. And I think any one of us who've been holding out hope that his end is going to be the end of all this shenanigans, I think we're in for a rude awakening.
No, definitely. But I don't know about end, because they'll definitely try to keep it going. I just don't know if they have an idea of how influential Trump really is. Because I think they think very similar to how most people think that he's like a little bit of a whack job. But when the cult leader dies, it's very hard for that cult to continue on at the same capacity. And maybe they're looking at it as, oh, he's going to be there like Jesus, and they'll just continue on like that. But Jesus had a very small following. He wasn't a cult leader. He didn't have a religion, was Judaism. They took it and made it something else. They have to somehow keep the MAGA going. And I don't know if there is a MAGA without Donald Trump. Because Stephen Miller could then be, maybe he just wants to be a puppet master. Maybe he'll be behind the scenes for J.D. Vance and be his chief of staff, or be the vice president and then take over, or something like that. Because I don't know if he reads well on camera very often. But I don't know. That'll be really, unfortunately, interesting to see, even though, because we'll have to live through that. But I just don't know if, I think they think Trump is just, he's great. He just does what we need him to do. But his influence is really telling.
I think you made a good analogy there, right? I mean, Jesus, there really wasn't a Christianity, right, when Jesus died. No. It's something that happened after him. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, there's over 1 billion Christians in the world today. So to your point, he had a couple of followers. It built into something. It built into something based off of the core concepts that he taught. And yeah, that's where I think MAGA might die with Trump, but that doesn't mean that the damage to our institutions and the way we go about governance isn't irrevocably damaged, irreversibly damaged, and isn't going to change into something else, right? Or be under attack by similar actors and similar players. It might be more fragmented than MAGA is currently, but they're not going away, at least not in the short term.
No.
So, yeah, it's an interesting analogy. Oh, man. So I think a good thing to emphasize here is that not you, not me, not anyone listening, not everyone not listening to this program, right, is that none of us is immune to propaganda.
Right.
And we talked about this in our other episode, right, where just being conscious of the fact that someone's going to say something to you with the intent to steer you in a particular point of view or to manipulate you makes you more defensive mentally. You're better prepared to think about things objectively. And so much of like our media that we consume today is designed to get an emotional reaction out of us, to get us to stop thinking, right? To not review things clearly and consciously, and instead to react, right? Because at this point, it's an easy line to draw. Reaction feeds the algorithm, which feeds engagement, which feeds dollars back to the companies that are doing this. And this isn't a new thing. I think so many people are like, social media. Like social media and the internet have just increased the speed, the velocity of which news and information gets projected at us compared to how it was in the past. And the fragmentation of that ecosystem is probably the most it's ever been at any point. That's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It means it's more democratic than it ever was. We have fewer gatekeepers for knowledge and opinions and information, but it's also a curse, right? Because who do you trust? And
nobody.
Well, that's the thing, right? You've got to trust some people. We're not meant to function alone. As people, we are a social creature, and we operate in family groups and communities, in states, countries, whatever. You can kind of go on up and up. We have to have some level of cohesion and kind of common ground among that. I think the problem is once you add in the fact that it's not just the speed and velocity, but we've become so accustomed to everything being on demand. in our culture, right? You can get a full meal delivered for yourself or your entire family within a few minutes, just through a few keystrokes on an app. You can get instantaneous entertainment for exactly what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. And these things have made it difficult, if not impossible, for us to kind of take that needed step back and to be patient and to let information come to us organically and to try to not fit it into a preferred narrative. And it's because so much, I think, of our perception of politics and government and current events, it's all for show. It's kayfabe, right? We see this with the shooting this week, right? The Joshua Johns guy shooting at ICE detainees in Texas. We see it with the Charlie Kirk shooter, Tyler Robinson. We see it with the Minnesota shooters. We see it with the other school shootings. Everyone's in this rush to throw people into one particular group or another. We're all like so desperate to point the finger with limited to no information. It's almost like we want to be right first, even if we don't have the information, as long as we get validated later around that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And you definitely, which is funny is that, it's not funny. Then you also get around to once you like hear the hype, you're like, oh, please don't let it be this person. Please don't let it a person. Because when you have these school shootings or these mass shootings, it took a while, but the first thing that came to my mind was like, don't be another fucking white kid. Why has it got to be a white guy? Why? Please don't be. It's a white guy. It's always some white kid who's doing the shootings. So I can't look past that anymore.
Yeah, I remember a meme a couple years ago. It was from a perspective of a black student, a black kid. And this is why you're nice to the white loner kid. And you get a text like, hey, fam, don't come to school tomorrow. And he's like, thanks, bud. Appreciate the heads up. And it's some real dark humor, but yeah, it's always. But yeah, there's so much. All this it's for show, right? It's kayfabe, right? It's that kind of wrestling facade of we have all these rivalries and all these issues and drama going on, and it's all bullshit. It's all self-serving, right? Yep. It's fucking Hakeem Jeffries setting filibuster records and it dramatically collapsing on the floor of Congress after setting the record. And then as soon as he stands up and walks off the podium, boom, the legislation he was opposing passes, right? What the fuck was the point of any of that? It's just all for show. Be like, I did something. I tried. And it's, no, you didn't. You made this up. And so where I'm going with this, right, is I think it's important for all of us, again, when we think about like the information that's coming to us and as we're thinking about what's happening, and we need to not rush to judgment, and we need to take a moment. We need to just like collectively take a fucking breath and wait for the information to come to us. And also we need to consider the source of the information. And so I think everyone learns about propaganda at some point. But there's different types of propaganda. There's white propaganda, there's gray propaganda, and there's black propaganda. And white propaganda is like that self-serving type. It's like above board. It's like the most common stuff we ever run into. If you want to think about what white propaganda is, when you walk into a CVS and you've got a sign telling you, hey, sign up, we do flu vaccines, sign up for yours today. That's white propaganda. That's CVS going, we're a pharmaceutical distributor, and we have these pharmaceuticals for you. Come in and get them. Or think about you're driving down the road, down the highway, and the light up signs tell you, warn you about drunk driving, right? Oh. That's the state serving its own purposes by encouraging you not to drunk drive. That's obvious propaganda that they're sending to you. It's not bad information, but it is intended to manipulate you and to get you into certain sort of behaviors, right? Get your vaccines or don't drive drunk when you go through that. Then gray propaganda is also self-serving, but like you might not publish it directly, right? You might go through some sort of intermediary and to present the opinion you want, but you launder it through some other person or group or whatnot. You don't do it yourself. So think about a scientist publishes an op-ed about climate change in the Wall Street Journal. But they don't disclose that their work is funded by oil and gas companies.
Gotcha.
Right? That's gray propaganda. Think about True Patriot 1776 account on Twitter, right? Is that one of your neighbors and you're actually expressing an opinion? Or is it like mis or disinformation from a troll farm? You don't quite know, right? And that's where it kind of gets a little bit shadier, right? You should be questioning.
Everybody's exposure daily is some influencer who's maybe hawking a product or reviewing a product where they've been paid by them, but they don't really inform you of being paid by them.
Yes, exactly. Sponsored content, but they don't reveal that it's sponsored content. It's
So that's
absolutely
great.
nothing.
Gotcha.
Which, being in the podcast industry now, Adam, you and I don't ever have to worry about that. Ever. And the last one, right? Black propaganda. This one's actually fun. This one's actually used to discredit people. The idea is you'll write a piece, but you'll make it seem like it's written by your opponent. And often it's presented as some sort of insider document or secret behind the scenes notes and positioning. This is like what you think of when you think of like the CIA or the KGB or Mossad putting propaganda out there. If you've ever heard of the plans leading up to D-Day and the Allies like faking dead corpses with fake attack plans that they were trying to get the Germans to find and think that they stumbled onto some valuable piece of intel. That's black propaganda. Probably the most infamous example of that. Have you ever heard of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's a fun one. It's basically a piece of Russian imperialist propaganda meant to discredit Jews because the Russians hated the Jews 100 years ago. I'm not saying they don't still do it, but they did. And at the time, they wrote up this document, which was presented as minutes of the secret Jewish meetings where they plotted global takeovers and was intended to be like, look what we found. Look at these people that we hate and we're trying to get rid of them. And here's proof. Right, that they're secretly plotting to take over the world and that they control everything. It's completely made up. Russian Imperial Intelligence Services created that, but it's actually been a massive thing in like conspiracy circles for years, right? And has fed a lot of anti-Semitism as a result of it.
It's always the Jews. It's fascinating.
And I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. I'm gonna edit that one out.
I mean, think about it. Somebody's always trying to throw them under the bus.
Yes.
But why is it because their population is limited, so it's easier to attack them? Because why don't you just throw all of the Muslim countries under the bus? Is it because their population is bigger and it's going to take longer to succeed? Like, why is it everybody finds a way to figure out, let's go with the Jews? That's a good answer. Good one. Let's go with that.
There's an old rule of thumb, right? Nations go to war, people die, industries are ruined, crops are ruined, everything. The people who walk away happy are the bankers, right? The financiers of it.
Right.
And for centuries, because of usury laws, because it's against the Bible, the only people who are largely allowed to bank were Jews. And so you've got all this misery that's happening. And it's easy to point, hey, who's the only people who didn't suffer because of this? The guys with the money, right?
Gotcha.
The guys who are backing this financially. That's not the only reason. I think you touch on others, right? They've always been fed on as an outside group. And so it's always easy. And this is just what people do is there's nothing people hate more than their neighbors. Think about it. Think about your school district's biggest rival. Educationally and in sports, right? You hate those people. You might not hate them, but you have that rivalry, right? You pit yourselves against each other. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, so you know what that means? I fucking hate New Jerseyites, right? And everyone from New Jersey, and I hate the state of New Jersey. Fuck New Jersey, right? And it doesn't mean I actually do it. By the way, if anyone fucks with New Jersey, I will fuck with them, right? Because nobody gets to fuck with New Jersey except for us. That sort of thing. It's a love-hate thing, but ultimately, we always are fighting with our neighbors. And so it's been easy historically to pick on the Jews because they're part of you, but they were never part of you, right? They're never part of the community. They were the closest neighbor and they're an other group that was distinctly different.
No, it makes total sense because if you think about Goldberg is the banker and his name is so different than everybody else's, we could blame him and then it works. Like, people go with what works. So it's like 20 years later, 50 years later, I'm like, that worked before. Let's just double down on it because there's a track record and people are like, oh, they remember that. This is probably why. It's always happening. Let's just blame them. And it just becomes easier. Instead of creating a new monster, just go with the old one. I get it.
And as a people, they got expelled from so many different countries, and it wasn't hard for someone who was biased or racist or just wanted to take advantage and leverage power to be like, hey, look, they got rid of their Jews and then their problem stopped. They finally dealt the solution. Not that it probably had anything to do with that, with the expulsion, but it happened. It's kind of like, well, now they're here and now we have problems. It's the same thing. And it's not that hard of a leap to take that to just immigration in general. Right, to today's conversation is those people had problems there And now they came here and now we have problems here. So they're the problem, instead of understanding that there are root causes to the issues that cause both your problems and the problems that cause those people to migrate in the first place. And you can continue to blame the symptom of that, or you can actually deal with the root cause. And we never deal with the root cause. We ignore the root cause because often the root cause is complicated or expensive or might cost
work,
a lot.
yeah.
It takes work, or it might cost lives to fix it. So the reason I think we're slightly off topic, but I think it was an interesting digression, is with these different types of propaganda, what they rely on you ultimately, right? It doesn't matter what group you're beating on here. It does rely on your extent to believe as a target audience the information that's coming to you, right? So if you know someone's trying to manipulate you and get you to look at things in a certain way, again, your bullshit detectors are more prepared. But with the speed of information and the way it comes to us and the way we're just starting to become wired as a species for this instant on gratification, right? An instant solution, instant delivery of the thing that we want. It's easy to lose sight of the big picture. And to me, what's hidden underneath this massive showing for Charlie Kirk, it's cover for the broader plan to seize power in this country. Again, politics 101, never let a crisis go to waste. But to me, tying these together, right, the unitary executive, this butterfly revolution, right, these are the ends they're trying to make, and Kirk's death is being leveraged as a means to achieve them. Right? Stephen Miller is making a clear appeal to fascism. Right-wing and conservative leaders and media continue to call for open violence. We see it again with this Joshua Johns shooting this week, right? Trump is denouncing radical left violence. The shooter, we actually know a lot more about him immediately than we do about Tyler Robinson, who shot Charlie Kirk. Is, as far as everyone knows, he was apolitical, and everyone's like, dude, he was just deeply internet based, right? He sat on 4chan and he kind of just was a cynical guy who was not political, right? Legacy big money media is being co-opted. Education continues to be under attack. Our administrative state has been gutted and nothing has been put into place to repair and fix those. And Congress barely even tries to defy the executive anymore. Like, they are a co-equal branch of government and they don't even fucking try at this point. And the judiciary is being, for the most part, ignored, or is totally, you can do what you want at this point. And so I don't want to pin this as some sort of direct historical parallel. That's like common and reductive. And I think it's something we fall for easily, right? If you're like someone who's ever studied Rome or listened to the fall of Rome, and people are always like, oh, what point in Rome's history are we, the American Empire that based itself off of Rome, right? It's not a good thing to look at that, right? In a sense that we look for these direct parallels, but there are kind of relevant parallels to them that give us a sense of how things might play out and the forces that are at play that I think is valuable for us to be on the lookout for and to pay attention to as we're trying to take this step back and get some perspective on things. Yeah. So I think this is a useful parallel for what might come next. And I want to talk about the Reichstag Fire. Now, you tell me, Adam, because I don't have any perspective on this. What do you know about the Reichstag Fire?
There was a fire in Germany that was set by either like a group or was blamed on a communist group, something like that, helped, I guess, get Hitler into power eventually.
Yes, essentially. So the Reichstag Fire was a fire started under suspicious circumstances that was blamed on the political enemies of the folks in power. And it really kind of kickstarted a lot of the end game for a lot of actions and whatnot that were already ongoing at the time. So I'm going to lean on a book here that I've read twice. I think it's one of those things that should be, at least excerpts from it should be required reading. Just in general, it's William L. Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And I want to focus on his passages on and around and leading to the Reichstag Fire. So the rundown here is the Nazis won seats in the Reichstag, which was Germany's parliament or Congress, starting in 1924. They actually progressively lost seats through to the 1928 election. Hitler was, at that point, imprisoned in Landsberg. The beer hall putsch had failed, and they started to shift their approach actively from trying to overthrow the government, which was a little bit more popular right in the late 20s, to before the economy got good. Then the economy got good, and their message was kind of falling flat, right? That kind of violent revolution. So they switched to trying to take it over electorally. And that's the kind of the big thing right behind Hitler's imprisonment in Landsberg, where, of course, he wrote Mein Kampf. So there's a lot of reorganization and propaganda work for a couple of years, a lot of under the hood, kind of grassroots political activity. But now it's the roaring 20s. Germany's doing okay. It's after its hyperinflation years. You're no longer lighting fire to wheelbarrows full of Deutschmarks just to heat your home, right? So Nazism is just not taking off. But the party, they're smart, right? They've realized they can't take over the government through violence. It's not going to work. They just don't have the support. But they're going to be ready for the next opportunity. The next time a crisis hits, they're going to be ready to jump in. So then what happens? October 1928. And the Great Recession starts, right? The stock markets collapse and the world economy is thrown in a tailspin. Suddenly, good times are over and Germany is just as affected as anyone else. I'm going to quote from Scheirer here. Its members, the SA, even its leaders, apparently believed in a coming Nazi revolution by violence, and with increasing frequency, they were taking to the streets to molest and murder their political opponents. No election, national, provincial, or municipal, took place without savage battles in the gutters. Passing notice must be taken of one of these encounters, for it provided National Socialism with its greatest martyr. One of the neighborhood leaders of the SA in Berlin was Horst Wessel, son of a Protestant chaplain who had forsaken his family and his studies and gone to live in a slum with a former prostitute and devote his life to fighting for Nazism. Many anti-Nazis always held that the youth earned his living as a pimp, though this charge may have been exaggerated. Certainly, he consorted with pimps and prostitutes. He was murdered by some communists in February 1930 and would have passed into oblivion along with hundreds of other victims of both sides in the street wars, had it not been for the fact that he left behind a song whose words and tune he had composed. This was the Horst Wessel song, which soon became the official song of the Nazi Party, and later the second official anthem after Deutschland über alles of the Third Reich. Horst Wessel himself, thanks to Dr. Goebbels' skillful propaganda, became one of the great hero legends of the movement, hailed as a pure idealist who had given his life for the cause. End quote. How does that last part sound to you?
Giving your life to the cause.
A pure idealist who gave his life for what he believed in. I mean, holy shit. And I'm listening to this, I'm reading this, and I'm going... And this isn't an original idea. This has definitely been pushed out there. I think the administration, especially, these guys, ever since January 6th, they've been trying to push Ashley Babbitt as their Horst Wessel. Her name's constantly come up. And in this year, in August, actually, recently, they reversed an earlier decision to not give her military funeral honors. I think they were trying to build her up as their Horst Wessel, built her up as a rallying cry. She was white, female. She was a former active duty service member. She was a reservist, and she was a relative nobody like this Horst Wessel guy. I don't think it got any traction or any sort of meaningful traction outside of a couple of MAGA hardliners and whatnot. And then
she was the woman who died at January 6th.
Yeah. She's the one who got shot in the face or something inside the Capitol. Yeah. So I think, just like I said, in August, they reversed the whole military honors thing. I think they've been trying to build her up as their kind of martyr character for a while, but it definitely wasn't getting traction, at least not as quickly and to the way that they wanted. So I think
this thing's going to be hard to do that for somebody who's like a nobody like that.
That's the thing, right? And so in shooting Charlie Kirk, I think Tyler Robinson suddenly gave the MAGA movement its Horst Wessel. Right. And this is what I talked about earlier, right? With the Butterfly Revolution. What was that last point that I made was the need for street level mobilization amongst the political core. People need to be riled up and out there and ready to commit violence at the drop of a hat. Wessel gave that to the Nazis and to the SA. And I think they're now pivoting. I don't know if we'll ever hear about Ashley Babbitt again from this administration, because Charlie Kirk is now that guy. Charlie Kirk is now that symbol, that martyr.
It's very interesting that you say that, is that because so much of this MAGA movement is based on conspiracy, a lot of those guys who got Trump elected and who have pushed a lot of his stuff are now backing a conspiracy over who really shot Charlie Kirk. Joe Rogan was talking about it, like all the details that have come out. Is like, there's no way he could have done this like this. There's no way he would have stopped to take apart his gun and then put it back together again later on. And all these, wow, if one of the biggest podcasters in the world is now questioning this, this is not going to go well for making this guy a martyr. Because now that they're going to think, well, it's an inside job, and then who'd want to have him shot? And they're just going to eat each other. There's a good chance of that.
Yeah, it could be, right? I think you see it with all these shootings now, especially in the past year, the several school shootings that have been notorious. You've got just such disinformation being put out there immediately. And again, I think Charlie Kirk is probably the easiest one for them to jump on and build, and has a meaningful amount of actual congressional and legislative support behind it. It's not just the diehards and the party that try to make it happen. This actually has some level of momentum more broadly. Yeah. So continuing with the Reichstag, the Nazis leveraged Horst Wessel as a rallying cry and the economic disruption of the Great Depression to achieve their greatest electoral success to date. In October of 1930, a few months after his death, they won 107 seats in the Reichstag. That's up from 12. And they continued to use Wessel as a symbol and position themselves as the defenders of Germany. Does that sound familiar to what Miller was saying earlier? You've awakened the dragon, right? This and that we build. So that we are defending the light. We're defending this culture. They use the exact same language around him. And in July of 32, they surged. They had another election, and they surged to 230 seats, right? They more than doubled. They were short of the clear majority that they wanted, and they held another snap election in November of 1932. It actually dropped to 196 seats. They were strong still. They were the second largest party in the Reichstag, but they didn't have control of the government with a majority strong. So in January of 33, there was a backroom deal where Hitler was named chancellor. That's when von Hindenburg and von Papen named him as part of a coalition government with a conservative group called the German National People's Party, not to be confused with National Socialists. Quoting again from Scheirer, on January 31st, 1933, the day after Hitler was named chancellor, Goebbels wrote in his diary, "In a conference with the Führer, we lay down the line for the fight against the Red Terror. For the moment, we shall abstain from direct countermeasures. The Bolshevik attempt at a revolution must first burst into flame. At the proper moment, we shall strike." Despite increasing provocation by the Nazi authorities, there was no sign of a revolution, communist or socialist, bursting into flames as the electoral campaign got underway. By the beginning of February, the Hitler government had banned all communist meetings and shut down the communist press. Social Democrat rallies were either forbidden or broken up by the SA rowdies, and the leading socialist newspapers were continually suspended. Even the Catholic Center Party did not escape the Nazi terror. Stegerwald, the leader of the Catholic trade unions, was beaten down by brown shirts when he attempted to address a meeting, and Brünig was obliged to seek police protection at another rally after SA troopers had wounded a number of his followers. Altogether, 51 anti-Nazis were listed as murdered during the electoral campaign, and the Nazis claimed that 18 of their own number had been done to death. End quote. And to me, the critical part there is that guy Brünig. He was a former chancellor of Germany. He was the guy in charge. But because of all the political deadlock, he actually ruled by emergency orders, not parliamentary law. He executive order in a sense for our world. And he couldn't get laws passed that need to get passed. What he did is he avoided and sidestepped the Reichstag and Congress in that time frame. He actually set the tone for what and how works when it comes to governance. Yeah, and so I find that interesting, right, is we see a lot of that now too. Congress no longer, in a lot of ways, functions unless you've got a clear party majority. You just cannot pass meaningful legislation in a lot of ways. It's not the horse trading and stuff that happened when you or I were younger. It's very much party line only at this point.
Right.
But what do we have now? We have an increasing number of executive orders being passed. Again, executive orders only impact those agencies and people who report to the president, right? They're not laws. They don't apply to the whole country when executive orders are passed. And I think when you start to pair that concept with unitary executive, right, where everything rolls up to the body and office of the presidency, right, and there shouldn't be oversight, you start to consolidate that power little by little, more by more. Congress still has the power of the purse. They have to allocate funds, and the judiciary still technically has oversight of what the laws mean and say, and whether or not the laws that are passed are legal. But we're seeing this progressive shift towards more and more power being centered in the office of the president. So, and there's a parallel right there. So, to me, this is where it gets scary. Continuing from Schreier. Goering's key position as Minister of the Interior of Prussia now began to be noticed. Ignoring the restraining hand of Papen, who as Premier of Prussia was supposedly above him, Goering removed hundreds of Republican officials and replaced them with Nazis, mostly SA and SS officers. He ordered the police to avoid at all costs hostility to the SA and the SS and the Stahlhelm, who are paramilitary street fighters, think militias. But on the other hand, to show no mercy to those who were hostile to the state. He urged the police to make use of firearms and warned that those who didn't would be punished. This was an outright call for the shooting down of all who opposed Hitler by the police of a state, Prussia, which controlled 2/3 of Germany. And yet, despite all the terror, the Bolshevik Revolution, which Goebbels, Hitler, and Goering were looking for, failed to burst into flames. If it cannot be provoked, might it not have to be invented? End quote. So think about it. At this point, Hitler's chancellor because a backroom deal and a coalition government. Like he's in power, but he doesn't have power, right? He still has to report to people. He still has to get people to buy in. And part of that deal that put him in power was that they had to have another round of elections, another snap election that was going to happen in March of 1933. So remember, January 31st, Goebbels is putting out that line, right, about we're waiting for the communists or the socialists to do something so that we can react. Remember, we talked about fascism in Italy, right? Everyone is responding to each other's violence and escalating. They're waiting for that moment now that they have some power to grab more power and to respond to it. So Hitler is really only going to be chancellor, guaranteed, for about 5 weeks. That's about the window of opportunity. And they lost votes in the prior election, and they don't want to leave it to chance. There's accelerating violence in the streets, but they can't get their killing blow, right, against their opponents. The violence was low level that was happening. It wasn't really something that was big. They needed something big. Just like we saw with our friends in Italy, where they needed, the neo-fascists needed the communists to do something in order to justify an escalation. So, in short, von Hindenburg, von Papen, Goebbels, and Hitler, they're at separate dinners on the night of February 27th, when a call comes in that the Reichstag's on fire. They all jumped into cars and they raced over there with Hitler, Goebbels, Goering, and other Nazi party officials kind of getting there first. Continuing again for Schreier. That it was a crime, a communist crime, they proclaimed at once on arrival at the fire. Goering, sweating and puffing and quite beside himself with excitement, was already there ahead of them, declaring to heaven, as Papen later recalled, that this is a communist crime against the new government. To the new Gestapo chief, Rudolf Diels, Goering shouted, "This is the beginning of the communist revolution. We must not wait a minute. We will show no mercy. Every communist official must be shot where he's found. Every communist deputy must be this very night strung up." On the day following the fire, February 28th, he, Hitler, prevailed on President Hindenburg to sign a decree for the protection of the people and the state, suspending the 7 sections of the Constitution, which guaranteed individual and civil liberties, described as a defensive measure against communist acts of violence endangering the state. In addition, the decree authorized the Reich government to take over complete power in the federal states when necessary. End quote. So that was the end. They basically used these powers at this point to make meetings and press from all opposition illegal. They arrested opposition leaders and political leaders and officials en masse. The Nazis now, leading in a week or so, leading up to the next election, they could campaign without opposition. They had all the resources of the federal government. They had the individual states, and they had plenty of money from big businesses that were allied with their policies and just saw them as good for business. The people were being intimidated in the streets by the brown shirts, and they were told of the future paradise that their country was becoming, and they were scared of stories of leftist violence and plots. I mean, what is the line? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah. Usually at this point in in your storytelling. I am at a very low point with very high levels of depression and anxiety. But for some reason, I have more of a sense of calm, which is very odd for me because panic attacks are usually like my go-to. But because it's so familiar, and I don't think the people who are in charge currently for us are very competent, and I think they will, and like hell, you just said before that Stephen Miller seems like he just copied and pasted shit from the textbooks of Nazi leaders and writings of Nazi leaders, that it could go both ways, and that they're also the party that is in charge and not kind of in charge yet, where, hey, look how things, and then get there. You guys are already in charge, and now you're burning it down. And I don't know if it's going to play the same way. It sure as hell might. But the world is still different, and I think they're trying to use a playbook that might not work. Kind of like in football, like you always they change the rules just slightly, and it changes the game completely. You allow like wide receivers not to be touched as much. All of a sudden, quarterbacks are throwing 4,000 yards a year. So we have so many different aspects now with the internet, and just the fact that they are the ones in power, and people spread conspiracies, and this is already a playbook that exists that people have access to. Oh, it gives me some sense of relief, if that means anything.
Yeah, I think you touched on it, right? It's a lot of this is a little bit of laziness, right? In terms of the execution and how they're going about it, right? It's like the thing that should give you calm is they're going through the motions, but they're going through the motions.
Right.
And it's not the most calming thing, because think about it. For the most part, fascists are largely incompetent in a lot of ways, but we only just barely manage to keep them at bay, right? Because everyone else is not much better than they are. So it's like we're all kind of bumbling and stumbling through the dark and just narrowly avoiding this. Should you be panicking at this? No, you shouldn't. But I'm bringing this up to show that there's clear parallels, and here's how the reactions might start to mirror each other, or at least resemble each other, and the actions that are going to be taken.
They have mirrored each other, it seems. So
in a lot
much
of ways.
It just seems, wait a minute, that just happened last week. Wait, that's 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So
this is like a remake of a favorite show, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this plot line. Oh, you did it slightly differently, but you got to the same. It was different means, but the same end that you got to.
It's the same trope. I keep playing it over and over again, just a little bit different here, a little bit different there.
Wow, you're actually going to love this one. I expect a good laugh out of you from this one. So, one last time, quoting from Shirer, publication of the documents proving the communist conspiracy was promised but never made. The fact, however, that the Prussian government itself vouched for their authenticity impressed many Germans. Holy Epstein files, Batman. I mean, you can't make this shit up. They're like, oh, we have the files. We're not going to show them to you. We have proof, but we can't. We're just going to keep it to ourselves. It's absolutely. I read that line and I started crying. Like tears of just crying and laughing. It's ridiculous.
That's what's my favorite meme of the week is. That's why the escalator at the UN didn't work, because there was hundreds of Epstein files clogging it.
That's a good one.
That's a great photo too.
I wish there was a different camera angle. What I read was, I had never been to the UN myself, but I've heard that the escalators are just wonky to begin with. Okay. Like they're very sensitive. But the most plausible explanation I heard was that one of the photographers that was attached to the group ran up to the top to get photos, but because he ran through, he like basically triggered its auto stop safety kind of mechanism. Was stepping onto it, which tracks. Again, I haven't seen any video or anything to validate that, but that's like the most. If you've ever been in a building with weird escalators, that definitely happens, right? It's a safety measure in case someone falls or gets stuck. And I can see the UN being one of those buildings with so many tourists, right? They don't want anyone getting injured and they want that shit. They want safety measures. But yeah, it's a good time. So I don't think we need to belabor this one. A few weeks later, after they won this election, they passed what's called the Enabling Act to give Hitler emergency dictatorial powers. They wrote that, hey, the powers of the states and the church and everyone else, they all retain their rights, but that the laws that the chancellor and his cabinet might enact might deviate from the Constitution. But that was it. That was supposed to run for up to a 4-year term. But by that point, they had control. They had suppressed all their enemies. It just got rubber stamped indefinitely until the end of the Third Reich. The one that to me was crazy is after they passed that, what they then did was they replaced the leadership of the individual German states. Again, a federal system just like ours. They replaced the leadership of the states forcibly, and they replaced them with party members. And then the state legislatures were dissolved, or their constitutions were changed to rubber stamp votes based off of the National Assembly. And then party governors were appointed to carry out the chancellor's policies. So that one to me was the critical one. If you know anything about Germany, or just anything about the United States, I mean, we are like herding cats, right? Like we are 50 individual states wearing a trench coat pretending to be a country in a lot of ways, right? That is a key aspect of how we fight and argue over governance in this country. Yeah. And that's the critical one, right? No one had ever actually attempted to abolish the separate powers of the German states. They were just too powerful individually for various reasons. And they were also really independent minded, right? Kaiser Wilhelm didn't do it. Otto von Bismarck couldn't do it. All the Holy Roman emperors in the centuries leading up to the creation of Germany couldn't fucking do it. They ruled, quote unquote, Germany through the consent of the states, right? The states were buying into these loose agglomerations of the Holy Roman Empire and or Germany as a single state. Hitler did it in 2 weeks, which is the crazy part, right? So to me, that's something we need to be conscious of is Charlie Kirk is not the Reichstag Fire, right? Charlie Kirk is, I think at this point now, the Horst Wessel character, right? He's the rallying cry, and we're not going to not fucking hear about him for a long time. We're going to be hearing consistently. What we need to be on the lookout for now is, I hate to say false flag, but you've got to have some sort of big public attack, and not a shooting, not a mass shooting, not a school shooting, not some kid taking pot shots at an ice van. You're going to have something big happen, right? Not necessarily 9/11 big, but much larger than just another isolated shooting to trigger this. I mean, we saw it this week, right? You have the whole executive order around designating Antifa as a terrorist group. People who support Antifa and all this, and they've suppressed the statistics around the sources of political violence in this country over the last 30, 40 years at the National Institutes of Justice, right? You've got Kash Patel, basically Sharpieing anti-ice onto a bullet and then tweeting out evidence from a crime scene before there's an investigation done. Like, you've got this constant push to demonize political opponents of this administration. You need an event to seize it, right? To jump on it. And we're not there yet, but all these events, they rhyme, right? They're moving in parallel and they're very similar to how they were. That's the thing we need to all be looking out for, because that's the opportunity that they're going to try. And then I think, to me, again, the scary part is, look, they already tried a fake elector thing back in 2020. I'd have to imagine that's somewhere deep in a Heritage Foundation archive or in a Federalist Society archive somewhere, they've talked about whom they would send in to take over the governorships and the legislatures of non-Republican states at this point, or states that at least don't align with the administration's view and support it.
Yeah. I mean, I really think obviously I don't know what it would be, but I do think they really want to start something in South America and some form of war, I think, to stop the elections. So I would not be surprised if it's some South American cell in the United States attacking in a blue state of some sort, if that was the way they had to go about doing this. Because too many like blue states would rather do anything than give an inch of power to Trump. So it would have to be something really outside the sphere of liberal conservative fighting. It'd have to be a foreign entity in order to push the agenda forward. And it seems like they're trying really hard to bring South America on board with the fighting, either by attacking Venezuela, blaming immigrants for everything. They got to get something going. And so that probably would be the best choice, I guess.
I don't know if that would do it, though. But it's funny you say that, because I saw an article from the Latin Times this past week where Venezuela had captured 5 people trying to smuggle drugs or something. But basically, they claimed that one of them was a CIA agent and the others were, I think, actual cartel people. And I think what they were trying to do was basically bring the drugs into Venezuela so that they could create a false flag sort of attack where, hey, here is the Venezuelan drug smuggling that we've been telling you about. And so Venezuelan officials actually caught these guys and are just like, I don't know how legitimate all this is, right? I don't trust the Maduro regime any more than I trust the Trump regime at this point. But you can kind of, and it follows just such a predictable playbook about how the CIA operates in Latin America that it's believable, but it's also too convenient at the same time. I don't know where I'm going with that one. I'm just saying, yeah, I could see that, but I also don't see, no one's going to buy war as an excuse to suspend elections. We've never done that. Like World War II, we held multiple rounds of elections, right? World War I, Spanish-American War. We held elections during the Civil War, right? Like we don't stop democracy and elections just because we're in a conflict, right? I think it has to be domestic, if anything. It's got to be some sort of thing that just can't be forgiven in a sense.
And I think it'd have to be in multiple places at one time. Like a multiple attacks in the country. It can't be just one place. It'd have to be multiple, saying it's widespread instead of just specifically here. But, I mean, it's just like, at this point, so many people assume that, I mean, I got to believe, like, I don't really think there's going to be a legitimate election in 2026. And I think so many people don't even believe it at this point that it's going to be really hard for them to sell the fact on no election or that it's a fair election when most people don't even believe them in the first place at this point. It's the boy who cried wolf. You keep saying that the elections are not fair, and now you're going to make sure they're not fair. I think so many people believe that at this point that it's going to be, they succeeded too much too fast with their propaganda, that they're now making it where we don't believe you anymore because you've complained about all these things, and now you're technically trying to do all those things that you've been complaining about. Either cancel culture or elections. You're kind of trying to do those very same things that you said were bad. I think it's going to be hard for them to undo that.
It is. And I think to our prior point about incompetence is they're touching on all these elements, right? Every single one of these. We can see, if you see, look at the plan and you look at the actions that are happening, they're there. But it's, are they effectual enough to come together? And are they greater than the sum of their parts? Is the question, right? I don't think they are at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to sit in the National Garden, but they're going to do lawn care. Well, you're sending them in and they're doing stupid, wasteful shit. What? Yeah,
it's just comical at this point. So I'm not saying that this is how our republic falls, but it's a blueprint for it. And it's out there in the open. And I think always the funny thing about like secret societies and secret conspiracies, the ones that matter, the ones that actually have an impact on the world around us, they're not hidden. People out there, the Freemasons, dude, there's a Masonic lodge like a mile from my house. It's right on the corner. They've got the name on the fucking door. They're not hiding. And same thing right here is these plans are out in the open. They're online. They're not backroom deals. They've been published. Anybody can read them. And I think it's up for us to pay attention, right? To take that step back, take a deep breath and read it for ourselves. The idea that they could succeed like kind of out in the open, I don't know. Here's the thing, right? I think you get kind of a version of bystander syndrome, right? Where your brain goes, oh, someone else is going to fix this. Someone else will take care of it, right? You see an accident, you see someone get hurt, and everyone, instead of administering first aid or calling 911, everyone's whipping out their phones and watching and hoping that someone else is going to jump in, right? I think, yeah, that's the concern. Is it really apathy that is going to bring this down more than anything?
I think they're best if they had somewhat of a long, which they seem to have a very long-term look, would be this won't turn out to be anything for the next 2 to 4 years. They will be taken out of power first. That would be the smart move. And do the damage that you're trying to do now, lay the guard work, know that the people who are going to come in are probably going to be mean well, but be incompetent like they usually are, like Democrats. And nothing will get done. And then shit will just fall apart. And then they come back in and say, we're going to clean up this mess that was created by them, even though they kind of let it start. Because that seems to be how all these things usually end up happening anyway. Something has to fall apart completely. And you don't want to be the one in power when it does. But if you've laid the groundwork for, hey, this works, and you could take over power much quicker, because the people who come in don't fix any of it, then that would be the smart play. But I'm hoping that's not the play.
Well, I think they've already been doing that with Biden. They attacked. They were so hilariously corrupt. What did Jared Kushner get? $2 billion investment in his, and then they rant and rave about Hunter Biden's cock for 4 years and about the corruption and kickbacks to the Biden family. It's because the finger was pointed at them about corruption, so they tripled down on corruption against Biden as a result to distract from it. And now no one cares about corruption because it's been all over the map. The economy recovered under Biden, but it didn't do great. I actually saw there's an article in Jacobin magazine this week where it was basically like inequality and poverty skyrocketed under Biden. And when you look at the numbers, what you see, and it is ridiculous. Well, if you start the numbers in 2019, it looks like this. If you start the numbers in 2020, it looks like this. Yeah. Biden wasn't president until 2021, right? Until January 21. So it's like, what are you counting? But what the thing you can clearly see from the data is that all of the COVID money, the infusion of cash into the economy, actually cratered inequality and child poverty and just poverty in America. The numbers dropped drastically. And then what happened? That money went away. The child tax credits went away. And now suddenly inequality has gone above pre-Biden levels, right, by the end of it. And that's really the economic distress that we're seeing is people are feeling squeezed and the people that are at the margins are feeling it the most at this point. And it didn't necessarily have something to do with Biden. It's just a collective actions of the governments successively. But it's easy to blame Biden because it mostly happened under his watch. And it was a combination of what he did and what Trump did, right, in response to COVID point. So not trying to carry water.
Cooks in the kitchen. And I think you have guys who have an agenda of a white Christian nationalist agenda. And then you have people who want to tariff everybody, and then you have a president who always wants to look good. Sometimes it doesn't work that well together.
Oh, exactly. Did you want to bring us out with something positive here?
Oh, I wish I had something very positive, but when we're talking about things that seem to always rhyme and happen regardless of itself, we have the Nepal uprising recently. Now, it's very few parallels with us when it comes to, it's a country of 30 million people. It's like New York, basically, a little bigger than New York. So things happen a lot easier and quicker and stuff like that. And this is 2025, so less than 20 years ago, they were in a civil war. So there's not that much of a parallel, but it's usually the same thing that happens in every country, whether it's Germany, Italy, any country that has some kind of uprising, is you have what we were just talking about, tremendous wealth inequality. You have government corruption and trying to limit representation, which is our podcast bread and butter so far since we started. And that's always the case. And for them, you had tremendous inequality, and then they decided, you know what? Let's try to limit free speech. Let's try to stop the Metas and the WhatsApps and the Instagrams. Let's try to ban them and block them. And so the youth, which I could also see very much happening in the next 4 to 6 years with AI and kids graduating with 40,000 plus in college debt in this country and having no jobs and having no opportunities, getting a little agitated. And so you have 20% of their population or kids from 15 to 24 who went on Discord chats because they were being locked out of everything else, and they started protesting, and they took to the streets, and they were able to revolt in a country of 30 million people. In basically a week's time, they were able to overthrow their government. And then they basically went back to the Discord chats and elected a politician to represent them going forward before they have new elections. And it was even though these are young people for the most part, unfortunately Discord is quite secretive, so you don't see who these people are, and they could be interlopers or older people, but for the most part they are young users. They elect a 70-year-old woman named Sushila Karkai, who used to be the chief of the Supreme Court in that country, who was ousted, or which she wasn't ousted, they tried to oust her, but in that country they actually have to retire at a certain age. So she ended up retiring, and they wanted her back because she tried to fight corruption. And she's there for 6 months so they could create a new election. And hopefully it goes well for them. But you could see how quickly things could start when you push too many people too far down. They have, and it was funny because it was like, I think it's called like yuppie wealth over there because of the inequality. They have like huge leaders when their kids are like flaunting their Lamborghinis and their wealth. We have our YouTube influencers.
Yep.
And they're like, I don't have a pot to piss in, and this guy is showing me a Rolex on. What the fuck is going on here? And I see that easily happening in this country as our youth unemployment goes up. And they seem to be these tech oligarchs seem to be very happy about AI and replacing all these people. These kids are not going to be happy because these banks are going to want their money back, and they're not going to have it to give. So I don't know if it's going to happen soon, but it could easily happen down the road in this country. And that might be our real revolution. And maybe Trump is going to just really fucking start the fire where everybody's like, all right, enough. I'm definitely interested to see how that happens. Oh, they were called Nepo kids, showing off their lavish lifestyles, fueling anger. There's a lot of those.
Nepalese Nepo kids?
Yeah.
Say that 5 times fast.
And so many of their people leave the country. And I think it's like almost 30% of their economy is from their children in other countries sending money back to them because there's nothing to do. There's no work. There's nothing for these people. But yet you have super wealth at the top. And you're just seeing it broadcast every day in the United States. And a lot of people are just going to start, they're tech kids. They're going to go in those Discord chat rooms, and hopefully instead of going to schools and shooting things up, they actually unite over something more positive.
I think that's a through line we're seeing. Well, 2 things, right, from what you said. Like, one, when this shit happens, it happens fast. When it's, is it Lenin who said it? Is like, it is weeks where years happen and years where weeks happen.
Yeah. I don't know if it was him, but yes, I know that. Yeah.
Something like that. Is that basically like when this shit comes, it comes quickly. I think Nepal's a good example of, it just, 20, 25 years and suddenly people have had enough, and boom, within a week it's done and it's changed. I think that's something we need to be aware of, that when this stuff happens, it will happen fast, and we're all going to be at work. We're going to be taking our kids to school, whatever, and it's going to be happening all around us quickly.
Because you see your kids dying in the streets because they're protesting or whatever, and also they're like, wait a minute, the government's now turning on them? All right, well, I'm going to be a hands-off approach. If they want to overthrow this shit, let them overthrow this shit. We're old people with children now, so we're not like the front and center protesting, marching people, because we have to do our families, but kids who are home, got nothing. They got nothing to do but a bridge to burn.
I think we see that a lot with, especially with Joshua Johns and Tyler Robinson and a lot of these shooters lately, right? They're very heavily into like meme culture. They're kind of Gamergate guys. They're on 4chan. The Trump, is it Justice Department or the FBI or whatever? There was a term under the Biden administration for kind of nihilists. And now the Trump administration rebranded it as nihilistic violent extremists, NVEs. And that's what they're trying to label trans people as being under. That's the whole pushing of, is this school shooter trans? See how violent trans people are. It's the fucking thing Charlie Kirk was answering when he got shot, right? And it's about trans shooters and all this sort of stuff, trans ideology. And so these nihilistic violent extremists, and they keep trying to like blanket this under Antifa and as being left wing. I think the through line we're seeing is, yeah, we've got this generation of young people in this country and young men, like Gen Z men especially, overwhelmingly for Trump in this past election, right? There's a sharp rightward shift because they don't have the economic opportunities, right? Because they're not really getting the chances to be involved. And yeah, I think economics is at the heart of everything. Opportunity is at the heart of everything. If people feel that they've got a chance, this is why we talked about, right? Who goes fascist is the people who see an opportunity to finally insert themselves into the conversation and to be a part of something and to kind of get that security that they don't have otherwise. I think that's going to be the critical element. I don't think that we're going to see more of these guys like Josh Johns and Tyler Robinson. Unfortunately, it's not going to stop, and the other shooters. But I think that's a core demographic that can come around to. They're not Trumpists at heart. They're not MAGA. They're not Republican. They're not conservative at heart, right? They're frustrated. They're feeling disempowered. And ultimately, let's be honest, if the Trump administration can't feed them, right, what they need to feel complete and feel like they're achieving what they want in life, they're going to find someone else who's going to do it.
I don't think passing weed laws is going to be the impetus when they're like, well, great, I could buy weed now, but I don't have the money to buy it. So I think that's going to be a problem.
Cracking down on porn and ID laws, and these very like little shit like that is going to turn guys like this away from these sorts of things. And it's going to be a process, but yeah, it could happen very quickly at some point. But again, I don't believe these guys ultimately are a hopeless or a lost cause by any means. These are a lot of the same people who did Occupy Wall Street. And they kind of did a lot, they did Gamergate. They did a lot of these kind of things. And it's a lot of nihilism. It's a lot of just, there's nothing for me to work towards. You start painting a vision and giving these people a place, we can come out of this.
Sure. If they see that everybody wants hope. That was like the whole Obama thing is, hey, let's do some hope and change. It wasn't the hope and change we were hoping for. And that's what spiraled out of control, it seems, to now. But that's what people want. They want to be hopeful for a better future for tomorrow. I don't want to have to live in my parents' basement.
Yeah, hope and change needs to not be words. It needs to be action. It needs to not turn from, hey, finally we're gonna improve things, to we're dropping drone strikes on school buses in Yemen and bombing weddings and being like, what the fuck? We haven't fixed anything at home yet. You're murdering people overseas with advanced technology. And this is where we're spending our time, money, and energy and resources on. Yeah. You see it this week again with Trump and the backing of Javier Milei's Argentinian regime, right? Yeah. He went in there, and I saw in the first few weeks after he took, all these right-wing economists, right? All these libertarians were cheering because they're like, look, the economy's growing. He's slashing our validation for what our beliefs are. And now here we are a year later, and it's all fucking falling to shit because guess what, right? That those policies don't work. It's a sugar high for the economy. And I think it's funny that they still haven't privatized their oil companies, their natural gas, their energy companies. They're still state run, because they know they need the money, right? So it's a shell game of going on. But if you need $20 billion from the US to keep going, your libertarian economic policy is not fucking working. And that's not what it is.
Yeah. I mean, they've had more governments collapse. I think them and Italy are just racing towards each other. See who who has more governments in a shorter period of time. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. You're a kid who lives at home and has tons of debt, and somehow my country has plenty of money to blow up something, but doesn't have money for me to get health insurance or new training because you guys have made my stuff obsolete. It's, who the fuck wants that? Who wants to live in that kind of world or country?
Yeah, exactly. All right, bud. Well, I think ultimately we've got a blueprint here. We know what might be coming. We got to just be aware of it. There's people in power with vested interest in making it happen. And it's happened before. And in situations really similar to our own, we got to be vigilant. We got to be on top of it. And honestly, we just need to paint that vision of let's actually address the needs of the people, right? And what we fundamentally need. And we can avoid this, right? We don't have to go down this road. It's not a done deal, but we got to stay on top of things.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, be sure to check us out. Give us a like and a subscribe. We're starting to get some momentum here. Please share our stuff. We're trying to be a little bit more active on social media and kind of get the word out there. Clip a little bit of these long conversations into the one or two semi-intelligent things we might say over a course of an hour or two, and moderately amusing. And if not, just make fun of us online. We'll take that too. No press is bad press, right? So just mock us, please, endlessly.
That sounds like a great plan.
All right, buddy. I'll catch you later.
Okay, man. See you later. Bye. Idiots Seeking Village is a production of Village Idiots Media. For more, find us online at villageidiotmedia.com or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and wherever you get podcasts.